As you just heard, this is the Fenway Rundown. That is a new intro. Unfortunately for you, it's the same hosts, Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam, home studios, home offices, Friday, January 23rd. It has been a different kind of couple weeks on this podcast as we have done, I would say haven't done a regular episode in a while where we just talk about the latest topics in the world of the Red Sox and kind of try to break it all down. We had an emergency Alex Bregman podcast. We had an emergency Ranger Suarez podcast, and we did our Hall of Fame ballots with Chris Smith the other day. So here we are back to kind of just bring it back to the norm and the norm of not much action, but lots of rumors with the Red Sox as they try to put together the final pieces of their roster with 2 weeks to go. So that will be the main focus, but we do want to touch on couple things as we get going here. There have been two press conferences in the last 10 days or so, 8 days, feels like longer. Two very important free agent press conferences involving the Red Sox. I've attended both of them. Alex Bregman in Chicago, Ranger Suarez at Fenway. I think, Sean likes to use the term dog and pony show a lot for those types of things because it kind of is what it is. But from afar, Sean, on those, especially with Bregman, now we're 8 days past that experience. It was cold out there, but worth it. Any kind of big takeaways from, those two events or the things that have been said? I have a couple, but I've been blabbing, so you go first.
Well, as far as Bregman is concerned, I think there's still some kind of unfinished business in terms of what went on in the negotiations. There seems
Yeah.
to be a disconnect, especially where it comes to uh, the no trade provision or clause that Bregman said was important to him, and the Red Sox didn't provide, but later added, well, we didn't know it was that big a deal. Maybe we could have worked this out. Those kind of things get discussed in the aftermath of a player leaving. One side, feels like it has to explain itself. Excuse me. In this case, the Red Sox, obviously. I don't know that we're ever going to get a resolution there. It's kind of
Hmm.
a he said, she said, as I have said. And, at this point, we're probably beating the proverbial dead horse. Bregman got a deal he liked in Chicago. He got 5 years of security. He got some certainty about where he's going to finish his career, and he's off. And the Red Sox have a significant hole in the infield still to plug with spring training now, less than 3 weeks away. And, the clock is ticking for Craig Breslow because there's not much out there, certainly not much on the free agent market. And even on the trade market, unless there's the uncovering of a potential matchup team and a player that could come in and help here, it does seem to kind of focus on Isaac Paredes with the Houston Astros. That's the name we hear the most. They've not been able to match up yet on a exchange of names. We'll see if that gets overcome here in the next couple of weeks. But it is a significant hole in the lineup that has to be filled with spring training coming up very close.
Yep, and we will get to that. I think my takeaways on the pressers, number one, the theme obviously out in Chicago is how much the Cubs wanted him, and how much that was clear from the jump. There's always the niceties and things like that in that setting. They had their bear mascot with no pants, rocking that, and the whole thing walking around. So, like, and I think he didn't shy away from the fact that the no trade clause was important to him whether the Red Sox knew that or not. At this point, I would say it doesn't matter. I mean, it does. He's not in the Red Sox uniform, and that's a big reason why.
Right. But nothing that can be done about it now.
That's right. And I think, the other one, obviously, Ranger Suarez's press conference a couple days ago. Nice to, for the Red Sox to have an event like that. People have been talking about when was the last offseason press conference like that. It was Kenley Jansen and Masataka Yoshida at Fenway. Obviously, those deals came together because of the timing. They were at Fenway. Usually, those they've had the last few years between Story and Bregman and some of those other deals have gotten done in spring training. But an event with a buffet, John Henry in attendance, those types of things. The Red Sox excited about Suarez. I think it's a little rich to hear Breslow talk about like this wasn't a pivot. We were pursuing both of these guys all along. Obviously, it wasn't the first conversation they had had with Suarez, but I don't think anybody, um, really thinks that they were going to be able to sign both of those guys, and so a little bit of revisionist history there. But
Yeah,
Suarez seems
it's
like a
hard to imagine 300 plus million uh, being signed between the two.
yeah,
And this is where, to peel back the curtain a little bit, we get that whole kings of interest and, oh, how come they're in on everybody, but they don't sign anybody?
hmm
The fact of the matter is that within the industry, teams routinely reach out to maybe 20 free agents a year, knowing that they
I'd
may
say much
only,
more than that.
well, I'm just throwing that name out. You're right. It probably is more. And they may sign one or two. They may sign none. The Red Sox had not signed a free agent to a major league deal until they got Suarez. But there is a lot of checking in. Hey, we'd have some interest here. Don't do anything until you hear from us. We want to be in on this. There are a number of things we're trying to pursue, but check back in. That's standard operating procedure. I'm sure the Red Sox did that with
Yep.
Ranger Suarez early, but it's hard not to look at the timing of this and see, essentially 48 to 72 hours after Bregman left town, this deal was done very quickly. That's not an accident. And if the Red Sox say it wasn't a pivot, then they're stretching the truth a little bit.
Yeah, and of course with Boris as the agent for both. And I think one piece that has surfaced that I don't know if we got to when we talked about the aftermath of the Suarez deal that day, but they won a bidding war against a division rival. Was it the Yankees? No, it was the Orioles, but no small thing because one of my big criticisms early in the offseason was losing the Pete Alonso war, which doesn't seem to be more of a pillow fight, to Baltimore. But if you are going up against a division rival and winning the battle for big time free agent, kudos. That's good. They did it. And, we'll see how Ranger Suarez fits in. I think, the stuff about the identity of our team, the bedrock of our team is starting pitching. We're going to go from there. Um, that's an interesting way to build a club. And I wonder if, instead of maybe the more balanced way or uh, the way that people thought with another big bat, whether it be Bregman or Bichette, in addition to Contreras. Um, I wonder if this kind of like super rotation slash super pitching staff potential, which I think it's pretty it has a chance to be really good. It's not like Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, but it is pretty good. I wonder if that's the likeness in which Breslow wanted to build a team. Like for him, I think if you were to give him the choice of like, well, you have to give 130 million, will you do it to a pitcher or a third baseman? I think in a vacuum, he'd probably choose the pitcher because of the obsession with the pitching lab and that's his domain, things like that. Um, would he probably rather had Bregman in this case? I'm guessing, but I think in terms of a consolation prize, a pretty good one because of the Red Sox, desire to have a dominant group. And as we talked about, I think the best way to put this, the best way to view it, is Brian Bayo was your opening day starter in 2024. That's not 5 years ago. That's not in a group that there was a lot of injuries. That was just like the state of it. And he's your number four now, and he's been good the last 2 years
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so that, when you put it in those terms, you really look at what this rotation is and the potential it has now. And that's, not counting on, and I don't think either of us would say that we're not counting on these guys to do anything for the Red Sox this year, but that rotation can be elite or at least very, very good if Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley never pitch for the Red Sox this year. And
Yeah,
that just raises the ceiling so much more.
right. No question that the floor is already pretty good, and there are options, and there is depth in the event of injuries, which we know are going to happen. We don't know how significant they're going to be. We don't know who they're going to impact, but I guarantee you, you will not have the five guys that we project to be starting make 30 plus starts each. That's not going to happen. It doesn't happen in baseball anymore.
And the
And
Red
so,
Sox would love, of course, if they could get that out of Crochet, which they did a year ago. Suarez, who has minor injury history, but yearly minor injury history. Gray, who's been a workhorse, and Bayo. If the Red Sox can get 30 starts each out of those guys, they're going to be in a really, really good spot.
Yeah,
But
I
of
would
course, the
say I would
reality.
even lower that number to maybe 100 combined. If they get, an average of 25 out of those,
Hmm.
they're going to be in pretty good shape. And you figure out how to fill the other 62 with Sandoval, with uh,
Brendan Bernardino, no longer.
yeah, well, no, I don't think we're going to see a lot of openers, or at least we shouldn't. But they do have depth, and they do have people they can turn to. Um, realizing that there's only so much you can look into and so much you can trust when it comes to public statements from the Red Sox. Here's why I don't think this was the master plan all along. At the end of the year press conference, it was made clear that while the Red Sox would like to certainly improve their defense, which has been horrendous the last couple of years, especially in the infield, what did we hear about the priorities this winter? It was, adding slug, adding pop, adding power, adding run production. We don't
And a
hit
bona
enough.
fide number two starter. Those two things hand in hand.
Right. And they got the number two. We can play the games with who is a number two, who's a number three, who's a good number two, who's a good number two on a good team, all of that stuff. Sonny Gray is a top half of the rotation starter,
Hmm.
and Ranger Suarez has the potential to do that if he stays healthy. So they did make good on that. But they made clear, too, that a priority was we can't finish in the middle of the pack in home runs. We can't go into next postseason without anybody on our team having more than 25 homers. And yet, that's kind of where they are here 3 weeks before spring training starts. Wilson Contreras basically cancels out the loss of Alex Bregman when you look at the production. But that only gets them back to where they were when they were eliminated by the Yankees in early October, when they hit one home run in 27 postseason innings. So this notion that, well, this was our plan all along is to me a little bit disingenuous.
Yep. And again, those infield options will be the focus of really the second half of this. I do want to wrap around the league. I want to talk about the things that have happened over the last 10 days. Obviously, the weekend when Bregman signs, followed by the Red Sox getting Suarez, a lot of big headlines here. In the days that have followed, there have been an absolute ton of like minor league deals around the league, short-term deals, relievers, swingmen, uh,
Trades.
but most importantly, a ton of big time free agents and a ton of big time trades. Kyle Tucker's a Dodger. Bo Bichette is a Met. Cody Bellinger is a Yankee again. JT Realmuto back to the Phillies. On the trade market, the Mets with two huge moves, Freddie Peralta and Luis Robert. Yesterday, probably the biggest trade of the offseason that's gone down so far. Mackenzie Gore goes from Washington to Texas for a package of five prospects. It's five so for one deal. Paul Taboni strikes there. The trade market super super active. The Mets paid a very reasonable price, I thought, for um, Robert, and a pretty steep price for 1 year of Freddie Peralta with the two guys they sent who are top prospects in that system. Um, two questions for you. We'll start, and I'll give my thoughts on this too with the first one. Anything in this bucket have much of an impact Red Sox wise? I mean, you see like a lot of these premium guys, pretty much everything we just talked about other than Bellinger, which is a re-signing. A lot of talent going to the National League and the two powers in the National League, the Dodgers and Mets. I think if there's one second, like to me, they obviously weren't in on Robert. They were in on Peralta, but not after Suarez. So it is, and we both said that price for, what's the Red Sox equivalent of Williams and Sprout? Like,
Yeah, well, I
one of
mean,
the
it would
pitchers
be
and
one of Tolley or Early, and they
yeah,
don't have a Jet Williams. I mean,
right,
maybe Franklin Arias might be close there as an infield prospect, but the difference is Williams is just about ready to play at the big league level.
right. So,
And
so like I do 26 a million a year for Suarez over those two guys for 1 year of Peralta, like all the time,
yep,
right?
yep, particularly given the young talent that you had to give up to get him for 1 year. In a vacuum, you might like Peralta more than Suarez in terms of performance. Um, but not at that cost
Right.
in
All about
terms
price.
of, what they had to give up. And as I said, they don't really have, you could find a substitution for Sproat in either Tolley or Early or Harrison or someone in that group, but they don't have a Jet Williams, so it's hard to, make an A and B comparison. But it was a significant amount of talent to give up for a year of control, not 2 years like
Right.
Gorg has, or starting fresh on a deal like Suarez, where you lock them up for 5. But 1 year, I mean, this is a Corbin Burns trade all over again for
Yeah,
Milwaukee.
and I think, the Red Sox don't have the room to give up five pretty good players right now for a guy like Mackenzie Gore, who people are very split on, by the way,
Yep.
too.
Yep, for good reason. I mean, the performance has not been there for any extended period. He's gone through 4 years of major league service time, and we're still not sure who he is and what his ceiling is.
Yeah.
That's a big roll of the dice for Texas to give up their number one from last year, three players in their top dozen prospects for 2 years of a guy with a lot of potential, but someone who hasn't proven it.
And the one thing I know we had talked about this just in passing over the last week, the Red Sox were not going to be in on Bellinger. Tucker, we'll get to his deal in a second. Does Bichette at that price intrigue you at all in terms of what the Red Sox could have done as a pivot?
Well, it's a huge commitment in terms of AAV because they went pretty short
Yep, it's the
for
Bregman
just
deal again with a couple more million,
yeah,
as you
yeah,
wrote.
right. With a Bregman deal with inflation and no deferrals, or far less in the way of deferrals, has the opt outs and everything else. I'm not as big a Bo Bichette fan as some people are. He has great bat to ball skills. He's questionable defensively. I worry about that knee and the injury history over him the last few years. In a 3-year deal, you're reducing your liability, so you're not committing to this guy into. I mean, at the start of the year, start of the winter, people were saying that Bo Bichette might get a 7 or 8 year deal because he's 27 years
No, that
old.
was on the table from Philly.
Right. For what, 210 million dollars or so. But the fact that he got so much more in the AAV on a much shorter deal, the Red Sox, uh, I don't think that would have been a good deal for them. I mean, he would have solved their infield issue and presumably played either third or second, whichever position they like him at more. But that's a lot to give up for a guy that I have some questions about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe if Suarez had gone elsewhere, I could see them getting involved in that market of the short-term high AAV for him, just because they had the deal with Bregman last year. But at a certain point, it's like, he was super uncomfortable when Heyman asked him if it was a 1-year deal. Of course, it's a 1-year deal. That's what these things are. You don't need to look much further than the Alex Bregman situation that just played out here to see how
Yeah,
that
he,
is a
he
1-year
wants it
deal
to
in
be a
every
one
way.
year deal because that means he had a good year and is going back on the market for something
Yeah.
longer.
But he has the flexibility and the safeguard of the opting in, especially with the lockout. Obviously, the timing is not going to be exactly in line because that decision is going to be a month before the lockout would start. But I mean, something to definitely think about where Bregman knew that he could opt out into a regular free agency in this winter. Last thing for you, Kyle Tucker. Not the last thing on the podcast. Last thing on this little train of thought. Kyle Tucker to the Dodgers at 4 for 240. Bad for baseball. Owners are going to push for a salary cap. Give me a break. I think I tweeted yesterday my response to all that is beat their offer, you stiffs. And people were like, that's ridiculous, Chris. Only 3 or 4 teams could match that offer. Really, with the net worth, with the revenue in the game, my guess is that like 12 teams could actually match that offer. And if you really wanted to stretch it, even more than that. I mean, could the Pittsburgh Pirates financially do that deal and not bankrupt their organization? Like, probably not, right? But I think it's like these teams, when people
Yeah,
think,
more
well,
more teams than you would think could.
yeah. So like I was thinking about this on my walk um from Target to Fenway the other day, trying to list the teams of who could actually do that deal. And just from the top of my head, obviously the Dodgers did it. The Red Sox could do it. The Yankees could
You got
easily
four
do it.
teams everybody but Tampa in the East could do it.
Yeah, Baltimore with their ownership, Toronto, yes, definitely. Then you get to, the
Detroit could
Angels.
do it.
The Angels do these types of crazy,
Yep.
mega deals very often.
Seattle could do it.
Uh,
Texas could do
Atlanta,
it. Yeah.
the Mets, obviously, the Phillies, the Cubs, um,
And
the
please,
Diamondbacks sometimes do these crazy things. The Giants could do it. We're at half the league. Like people are, well, they could only do it, and that's not true. They're the only ones that do it, and it's different. So, I mean, it's on the owners at the end of the day, and I'm sure you like labor talk about a million times more than I do, and you'll have plenty of time for it in a year. But like, it's just it's in,
well, and also, please spare me after this took place, they're going
yeah.
for a lot, a salary cap.
You
They've been
directing that
angling
to
for a
our good
salary
friend
cap.
Evan Drellick, Sean?
This is taking nothing away from Evan's reporting.
That's too
He's an
bad. I like
excellent
taking away from
reporter
Evan's
who is
reporting.
very well connected in terms of labor. But that was a ridiculous quote that all of a sudden now the owners are motivated for a salary. Guess what? If the sun had come up in the east tomorrow, they would have gone for a salary cap.
Hmm.
This has nothing to do with that. They're using it as an excuse. They're trying to turn the Dodgers into boogeymen. Oh, they're ruining the game. Spare me. It's a lot of pearl clutching by a lot of owners who were motivated to do this all along. And this is just one example of them using it as an excuse to pursue the strategy they were always going to go after.
Is it when we get back to Evan, like, isn't it cool to see someone, which is a rare, like, probably the first time this has happened in this industry, have a really successful career, having worked for MassLive, NBC Sports Boston, and the Boston Herald?
Yeah, that's rare. Usually people, have kind of dead end careers if they follow that path. But
Yeah. So, you went in what, I guess, you went in the reverse order if he did, right? Kind of, right? Yeah.
yeah, I went Herald, NBC, Mass Live. He went Mass
MassLive.
Live, Herald, NBC. Right.
Yeah. With a stop in Houston, which you didn't have.
No,
So,
thank God.
last thing is what people are probably tuning into. They want to know which infielder the Red Sox are going to acquire. So lucky you, we have all the answers. We don't. But there are the options. I think, people are obsessing over a question that Smith asked the other day, and it was a good one, about how much with this new like pitching first infrastructure thing that they're doing is infield defense really, really important, for you. And this is a point I've been making the entire off season. Really, is uh, there's really not that many play when you're talking about defensive improvement. The outfield is already elite. You're going to have those guys in the same spots or the combination. Narvaez is going to be behind the plate. Story's going to be at third. And so, like, there's really, where can that improvement come? Well, we identified first base, second base, and third base. Contreras over everybody they had last year there should be an improvement. And so now do they, this comes down to at this point, you're not going to find the perfect player. I think that's why they looked at Marte and Bregman as the two
Yeah,
most complete guys.
Marte would be the exception to the rule where he would make
Yeah.
them better both offensively and defensively. He's one of the top three or four second basemen in the league in terms of defense. And he's a guy that can hit 30 home runs and knock in 100 and steal bases and be a switch hitter, everything. There's nothing to not like about Ketel Marte, but by all indications, Mike Hazen means it when he says that door is shut. And you look at Isaac Paredes, yeah, he's going to give you a little bit uptick in terms of offense, but at best, he's an average defender
Yep.
at third base. So, uh, you know, if you're waiting for somebody to have a dramatic impact on both sides of the ball, Paredes isn't your guy.
Yep. And so, the options are what they are. Paredes, not a great defender. Horner, 1 year. Marte, not
Excellent
available.
defender, very average offense.
Well, he had a very good offensive year last year. And like, Shaw, there's issues, with him. Donovan, left-handed, plays second, and do they want to do that with the Cardinals for the third time? I mean, they probably wouldn't stop them, but you go down the list, and Beatty and Vientos in New York. I think there's just There's a lot of options. They clearly haven't found the perfect deal. I think if you could find a way to get one of those guys without including earlier Tolley, to me, not a lot of those guys reached a level of wanting to give one of those up.
Yep.
At the same time, though, there's a really, there's a chance to, really make your team a lot more functional. Is it better? Maybe not, but functional by making one of these trades. I was thinking the other day, people are going to think this is ridiculous and hate it. A package where you do Duran to Houston, a player they could really use for Paredes, and you get Houston, which this is a big ask because they're weirdly cheap, to take on one of your dead salaries, like a Jordan Hicks or a Sandoval. Not that he's, without value. Maybe you package Duran and Sandoval and get another, okay player in addition
Yeah,
to
but I
Paredes.
mean, Sandoval's money is what, eight, nine?
10. It's like
Okay,
10 on the AV. I
right. I
mean,
mean,
that's
and and
helpful
and there
if
there
he's not going to have a
and you
role.
have value in Sandoval if he's
Yeah,
healthy. Hicks has no value
right.
given his performance and his salary. That's a bad combo.
But I'm just saying, if you have, them take back one of those two to kind of alleviate some of the CBT concerns, I would probably not do Duran for Paredes straight up. I don't think I'd fully discount it. I know it's an overpay, but it's just like it makes your roster so much more functional. And at this point, they don't have a ton of leverage and they don't have a ton of options because we are so late in the process and the trade market's kind of about to close. So I
Yeah,
think that one's
at that
intriguing.
point, I'd rather hold on to Duran and move him at the deadline.
Play him at
Uh,
second, as everyone
Pardon me?
thinks. But at that point, just play him at second.
He's done it before, you know.
He has, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I don't make that trade. I don't give up Duran for Paredes. And if it means that you have to go with Meyer at third and a platoon of Romy and Hamilton at second to start the year, see how that goes and
see, that's
reevaluate in July. I don't love it, but I also don't overpay just for a marginal upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably or definitely an overpay too. I think if you could find a way to do Duran, or we've heard Rafaela's name more and more, one of those guys, for Paredes plus, or they take back the Hicks deal or something to give you more value there. I think there's a window where it really could help both teams in like a functional big league trade. Trying to find a package for a year of Horner or Donovan or one of these things where you're just bleeding out more of those arms. I think both of those guys you'd have to start with earlier Tolley. For Paredes, I think you could find a way elsewhere. And I think that's what they should be trying to do. As I reported the other day, and people took it as if something's imminent. I don't make guarantees. There are, a lot of irons in the fire, and we'll continue to monitor those ahead of opening day.